All right, hello. Got one more for you. I wanted to spend some time doing an unboxing, first impressions, and general overview of the new salty engineering bolt from Jared Bushman here. So if you don't know, Jared did those pressure testers where you can keep your barrel on, and he is now in the process of prototyping a new bolt for the G6R here. So I think there's a lot of big changes versus a standard G6R bolt. There's a lot of really interesting engineering going on in here. I think by trade, he is a fluid dynamicist, so I think this is completely within his wheelhouse. We've got a smart guy who is an actual engineer now making some bolts for the G6R in 2023 here. So it's a lot more than just a thumb drive replacement, and I'll tell you what I mean by that as we get into it. There's a lot of things that have been reworked completely. Almost every component is different than every other bolt for the G6R aftermarket or otherwise. So first things first, I wanted to get some weights. I just kind of wanted to give you some specs, and then I will go through operational differences, material choices, things like that. I've been talking to Jared a lot, and I feel like I'm in a good position to speak on this bolt and presentation here. So first things first, let's kind of talk about the current offerings. And I've made a video on G6R bolts in the past, so, but I think it's worth talking about again, and then where this kind of fits in, and then we'll get some data. So, first thing, we have a couple different iterations of G6R bolt. We have their open face bolt. We have the pillow face bolt, which takes Exalt, bolt tips, just to kind of give you that flat face, which brought us into the, the premium bolt, which has, these air inlets in the back. It has a threaded insert. It has this pillow tip in here to cradle the ball. And then the actual thumb drive itself, which is the same bolt as you can see, but it has this pin that is kind of no-show that people really like. So as far as aftermarket goes, we have, the Tect, we have the, Cush bolt, which you can run, LV tips in, which is what I do. I think it has a really nice air inlet. Like I like these bolts a lot. And then we have the older style, the Hush bolt, which has a cupped face, which is not really as impressive in 2023. Kind of a deeper cut, we also have the Jewett bolt for the G6R. This one is kind of the worst of all worlds here. It has a lot of the stuff from the Cure bolt, which is nice, for that kind of anti-clipping stuff that kind of mitigates the cupped face. It's got 3 O-rings, which I like, and it just kind of looks kind of crazy. The detent retention system is a little crazy. It's very heavy. And then we have, the salty engineering. We have this bolt here. So I think at first glance, people are going to be like, "Oh, it's a new thumb drive." The value proposition is not that you can buy a thumb drive bolt for cheaper. That's not what this is. And there's some key differences if we look through it. So one, he's added an O-ring on the back for concentricity in the actual, breech here. So it's going to be more stable. You're going to get less wear. There's much less slop in the bolt itself. As you can see, this kind of, holds the back. It keeps everything aligned within your bore here. 2, the hardware is black, which is badass. 3, it actually uses a little cartridge. So this is just threaded in there. There's no spring, there's no detent. It's one piece in there. It's like a little piston. So the action is very binary. It's very in there. And you never have to worry about that ball and spring coming out. So it's now just a completely its own unit in there. No more ball and spring fucking bullshit, right? Still sealed, still steel. It's not aluminum, it's not anodized. As you can see, the dimensions are almost exactly the same, right? Like, the bore size is the same. He's added this O-ring back here. He's turned down this area back here, as you can see. So this is actually, material has been removed for even less wear in the breech. And the material itself, I was talking with Jared, and the material itself is not, it's like you pick it up and it's so much thinner. Like I was talking to Jared, it's like it's stronger, and he picked this material because it's the coefficient of moisture absorption is like 1,000,000,000% lower. So these will never swell. These will never, you leave them in the sun, they're not going to swell. They get paint in them, they're not going to swell. You get oil on them, they're not going to swell. So this is an anti-swelling material versus the thumb drive, which, as we all know, will swell. And I mean, you can see on all these bolts how much, wear they get just from being in your gun. Like this drag at the end, that's gone. You've got an O-ring back here. This material, it's not going to absorb the liquid. It's not going to swell. It's not going to crack. It feels, it's actually crazy because the surface finish quality on these is insane. Like you can't even, like, look at this. Like incredible versus something like, like a Tech, not that I love the Tech bolts, but it's like you can see the striations from, the machining on it, right? So these are just, the surface finish quality is immaculate. I think the build quality is really good. And what he was telling me from, an engineering standpoint, this inlet is better optimized than the Bob Long one. There's actually like a hump in there. So that way, as you shoot, it creates an air pocket, and then the next, the shot glides over the air pocket instead of actually following the bore itself. So, you combine that with, he's gotten rid of all of this porting back here on his Field 1 insert. It's mostly just open on the die insert. It's just completely open. You have completely uninterrupted airflow. You're going to have an incredible velocity increase. I'm going to do a video on sound signatures and things like that, but operationally, I think I've been seeing a lot of people saying, "Oh, I can't wait to get it. I finally want a thumb drive." It is a brand new bolt. The operational principle is different. The material is different. O-ring placement is different. Hardware is different. And then it's actually got some customization. So we've got threaded aluminum inserts here. One just takes the current year, die tips. And if you're familiar with, the Icon DSR, they have a new tip coming up that has the little nubbins, from like the LV bolt tips, right? So it's designed around those new die tips. So it'll have the nubbins. And even so, I think this sits perfectly in the breech where you're not going to have any paint handling issues, but it will, I think, ship with the ones with the nubs on there for holding the ball flat. Just a big open bore type of bolt here. Threads in so nicely. The build quality is just immaculate here. And then for people who love, the thumb drive, who love shooting pillow bolts, we've got this now too. It uses the Force ones. So now there's infinite availability. You don't have to cut your pillows anymore. It's just, you buy the one from the Force, you can, infinite availability for when you shoot it out, if you shoot it out. Plus it's even a little bit better. They got rid of all of the flow interrupting things here. So really high flowing bolt. Both of these will, with either insert, shoot better, shoot at a higher FPS. It will be hotter bolts than the thumb drive or any kind of tech bolt here. So I'm going to do some videos on sound comparison, but this is just general overview. In addition, he has 2 pins currently. I believe he's working on more pins. You have, for the time being, the standard kind of thumb drive, and then you have this one for the Dragon and the Tactical, which is a little bit more proud. You can pull that out easier here. So I'll do it with the hardware since there's hardware included on these here. Let's see. So I'll do it with a pin on everything. So let's take some measurements here, just because generally I think the lighter the bolt, generally the higher the pressure I have to run. I'd say, but with these airflow changes, you're going to be dropping your pressure from the increase in flow. So I think it'll end up being a wash. I'm not as concerned with weight as I would be in other instances here. So I'll put the pin. Here is, let's start at the beginning. Here is the oldest G6R bolt. That is the just open face bolt here with the pin. We're at 30.2 grams. Nice. Here is the pillow face bolt. I bet you it's pretty similar. 30.3 grams. Yep. Here we have, I would say, what shipped in the Field 1 rippers, like the current year best G6R bolt. 31.8, so a little bit heavier. It does have this aluminum insert now, so I mean, I get it. The Tect, this is the Hush bolt. 30.1, so effectively the same weight. Here is the new Cush bolt with an insert. 30.7. So as you can see, we're right in the 30s on pretty much everything here. On the Jewett, 39.7. Yow! So, 25% heavier, which I think lends itself to why you're able to drop your pressure so significantly with this. So that's a fun data point. Now to the thumb drive, 30.9. So again, still in that sweet spot, still in the mix. And now on Jared's, we've got a couple different configurations. Let's do the one that is kind of apples to apples. On the thumb drive, 30.1, 30.2. So 0.6, 0.7 difference, marginal. If we do it in the die configuration here, 27.6, so certainly much lighter. You don't have all of this aluminum here for this to thread into. You don't have that. So, again, 15% lighter or so. But, again, if we put on this larger one, 29.4, we're right back in the ballpark, right? So I think if you decided you wanted maximum weight, which is certainly a thing you can maximize for here, you could do in this setup, and you are now 31.8. You are now the highest weight except for the Jewett bolt. So I think my configuration will be this die tip. I'm going to see how the sound signatures on all of these play out. We shall see. But again, I think because you're going to be able to lower your pressure so much because of this, I don't know how sound is going to impact this here. So that's the last variable. I'm going to do FPS tests. I'm going to do sound. It's so satisfying. It doesn't wear out or feel janky, right? It's so snappy. I think, first impressions, it's like you pull it out of the box and it's like you squeeze it and there's no flex. Like, it's so much thinner, but there's so much less flex. Like, you can just tell this is a higher quality material, right? And I think the biggest thing that people are going to think is that this is just a cool, hey, I can finally buy a thumb drive bolt for not $200, right? It's so much more than that. I think, he listened, and the coolest part about the thumb drive is that you don't have a pin sticking out of the top, right? So I think other than that, excuse me, other than that, which is, you don't have a pin sticking out of the top, there's really no other comparison to be made. It's the operational principle. Yeah, it's a bolt, but operationally, the inlet design is different. The tips are different. You get more tips. Like, G6R is already a tuner and tweaker gun. I would say this takes it even one step further here. So I'm really happy with this bolt. I bought a decibel meter, so I'm going to go and do some testing on sound signature and actual performance. So stay tuned for that video, but I think this is about to be the hot boy option for G6Rs in the coming months here. So stay tuned.